Hello and welcome to today's presentation, Navigating the Publishing World. My name is Lisa Malice. I'm the incoming program chair for the Florida Gulf Coast chapter of Sisters in Crime, which is the sponsor of this virtual presentation. I also serve on the Sisters in Crime National Education Committee as a webinar producer and moderator, and it is through Sisters in Crime National that we are able to offer our presentation today using this crowdcast platform. Before I get further into my introduction, let me go through a few housekeeping notes. First, the best browsers to use in accessing crowdcast events are Google Chrome, followed by Firefox. They're just the most compatible to use with this platform. If you're using one of these two browsers and is still experiencing technical problems, try two things. First, click the Help button at the top right of your screen and click on Compatibility Mode. This is usually enough to get things working correctly. The second idea is to click on the Get Audio Video Help button in the lower left corner of your screen. This program includes two panel sessions today. The first, moderated by Roger Johns, will cover the traditional publishing path and include at the outset a general review of the path, its nuts and bolts, before bringing in the panel. That session will end no later than 2:45. The second session on independent publishing, moderated by Martha Reed, will start promptly at 3 p.m. and follow the same format. That session will finish up at 4:30. You do not need to log in twice to attend both sessions. Simply keep your browser open after the first session ends. Once our panels commence, you can offer questions to our authors, anything you like at any time, using the Ask a Question button at the bottom of your screen. Using the Ask a Question button allows both the moderator and the audience to keep track of questions for the Q&A period of the program. If you see a question already asked, feel free to like it. The questions showing the greatest audience interest will be answered first, but we promise to get through as many questions as possible before the end of each panel session. What can you expect today? That depends on where you are in your publishing journey. You may be like me, an emerging writer, not yet published, but eager to see your novel in print, to get your story out to readers one way or the other. Perhaps you are a self-published author interested in the traditional publishing, but not sure if it's a good move or even possible after having self-published your work. Then again, you may be a traditionally published author, tired of ceding control and profits over your work to a third party, or possibly someone whose publisher went out of business, opening up the chance for you to go independent. Our panelists today represent this wide range of authors and publishing options. They are ready to share their publishing paths, discuss the pros and cons of each one as they experienced them. They are here to offer insights and answer your questions to help you decide which path is right for you in pursuing your publishing goals. For me, I chose to go the traditional route. I started writing my novel 7 years ago in between work and family commitments, and 3 years ago, thinking my book was ready to go, started a search for the right agent to represent me with publishers. With the help of friends, I polished my query letter, my synopsis, and first 3 chapters, and was rewarded with requests for the full manuscript. Needless to say, I was ecstatic. But I received no agent offers. My manuscript, it appeared, was not quite ready, but being a novice at fiction, it was beyond my abilities to see what was wrong, what was keeping my story from being snatched up by an agent. Through my network of writing friends, I hired a developmental editor, someone who actually had worked as an acquisitionist editor with 2 major publishing houses, but who had decided to work as an independent editor. Her critique and edit opened my eyes to issues in my manuscript that I wouldn't have seen myself. Too many subplots reflecting too many genres and lagging suspense among them. My editor was very happy with my revision and referred me to agents. I had a false start with one agent who had to step back from representing me for personal reasons, but the next one stuck. My manuscript went out on submission in April. I've had my share of rejections, but the feedback is encouraging. They like my writing. One editor, someone I actually met at a conference and later friended on Facebook, requested a revision of my first 50 pages or so. I've just finished it, and I'm excited for her to reconsider my manuscript. I'm closer to my goal than I have ever been, and excited about it. So why did I tell you my story? For one, it reflects my path to publication, a path that so many writers have experienced, one full of ups and downs, moving forward, backing up, starts and stops. I could have given up at any point along the way, but I didn't. And you know why? Because of something I said in my story that you may have missed. I mentioned my network of writing friends. Any successful author will tell you that writing and publishing is a business, one that requires you to build a network of people, successful writers, readers, even editors and agents. These are people who can and will support you with every step you take. Just last week, I needed help on my manuscript revision, someone to discuss options for varying verb tense, past versus present, between my POV, point of view characters. I turned to a friend for advice, a published writer and a writing coach I met at my first conference 7 years ago. For me, as for everyone you will meet here today, there is one stellar organization, one network in the writing community that has made the difference for me, and that is Sisters in Crime. I would not be on the cusp of getting published today without my sisters and misters in crime. Sisters in Crime is the only organization of its kind, an international society of readers, writers, agents, publicists, librarians, everybody in the publishing business, men and women, a diverse group of people who support our unique mission, which is to promote the ongoing advancement, recognition, and professional development of women crime writers. But in reality, we support anyone who shares our passion for mystery, murder, and mayhem. I joined Sisters in Crime in Atlanta and found a great group of people who shared my passion for writing mysteries. This group included writers like me who are just getting started, along with authors published both traditionally and independently, and readers just looking to share their thirst for mystery. They supported me and I them in so many ways, offering encouragement, reading and critiquing each other's writing, sharing ideas, resources and contacts, promoting book launches, writing reviews, generally smoothing the road we all travel on as writers, and helping to keep the car running and the foot on the gas pedal. My network of supporters grew as I attended conferences where I made great friends of people in the business near and far, including many, many members of Sisters in Crime. All have contributed to my journey as a writer in one way or the other. Best of all, the friends I've made, really good ones. When my book is finally out in print and ebook, and I'm confident it will be, these are the same people who will spread the word and help my story reach readers near and far. To learn more about Sisters in Crime and its many benefits, including free twice-monthly webinars on topics of writecraft, PR, and marketing, crime, and more, go to sistersincrime.com. Better yet, visit a chapter meeting, virtually or hopefully soon, in person. If you're local to the Tampa area, please check out our local Sisters in Crime chapter at www.flgcsinc.com. That's flgcsinc.com. And that's actually in the handout I sent out earlier this morning. Otherwise, you can find a list of chapters on the Sync National website under the Connect tab. If mystery, thriller, and suspense is not your genre, don't worry. Membership is only $50 a year, which is a great value just for the educational benefits it offers. But I do encourage you to find that group that fits your genre. There are many national and local organizations out there filled with people eager to welcome you, help you write that story that you have to tell, and guide you in navigating the publishing world as it relates to your genre. Now, without further ado, let's get to the show on the road. Roger Johns is the moderator for our first panel on the traditional publishing path. Roger, please join me on screen. Roger is the author of the Wallace Hartman Mysteries from St. Martin's Press Minotaur Books. He is a 2018 Georgia Author of the Year, a two-time finalist for the Killer Nashville Silver Falchion Award, and the runner-up for the 2019 Frank Yerby Fiction Award. His short fiction is forthcoming in Mystery Weekly magazine and viral literature, Alone Together in Georgia. Roger's articles and interviews about writing and career management have appeared in Career Authors, Southern Literary Review, Writers Unboxed, and Southern Writers Magazine. Please visit him at rogerjohnsbooks.com. So take it away, Roger.
Thank you, Lisa. Can you hear me okay? Okay, well,
Yes.
I'm going to send you back to the audience and jaw for a bit. All right, it looks like it's just me. First of all, thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm happy to be here. Let's give a huge round of applause to Lisa and the officers at the chapter, the Florida Gulf Coast chapter of Sisters in Crime, for organizing and putting on this event. I think it's a wonderful thing that's happening. I'm going to spend the next few minutes talking about some of the things that worked really well in terms of my writing journey, which took 9 years, and it took about 6 years longer than it should have because of some discoveries that I made far too late. And my presentation is broken down into 4 pieces: planning your approach to an agent, making your approach to the agent, interacting with the gatekeepers to the publishing industry, and something that has been explained to me as the golden triangle, which is something you need to be very aware of once you set your first foot on the path of a traditional publishing contract. So planning your approach, some of the things I'm about to say are obvious. You can get them from books, and the chapter has a fabulous multi-page resource that has a lot of the nuts and bolts in it. I encourage you to read that. I've read it. It's excellent. But I think the best advice I can give on planning your approach is to look through the websites that have lists of agents and look for the ones that handle the kind of books you write. When you read books that you enjoy and they're the kind of books that you envision yourself writing, look at the acknowledgments section in the back. And of course, you know that a lot of authors will acknowledge their agent and put that person on the list. And always talk to people who are a little further along on the path than you are, and ask them, if you were with this agent at some time in the past, how did things work out? Because it becomes a very, it's a professional relationship, but there's a lot of personal chemistry in it that has to work right. I've known more than my share of individuals who have gotten great agents and the personal chemistry was wrong, and it put things off, sometimes for years and years, because the writer felt like they needed to have an agent when really they needed the right agent, and they stuck with something longer than they should have. As you compose your list of agents that you'd like to approach, look for those that are members of the Association of Authors Representatives. They subscribe to a code of ethics, and that can give you a little bit of help when things might get dicey between you and an agent or a prospective agent. I have an acquaintance in the business who hooked up with an agent from a reputable firm. Their personal chemistry wasn't good. They didn't get along at all. The writer wanted to back away, but he wanted to know who the agent had submitted his work to so that he wouldn't tread down those paths again since his work had already been rejected. But the agent didn't want to disclose who that was. So the writer said, well, I'm going to have to file a complaint against you with the Association of Authors Representatives unless you tell me who you submitted to, so I don't submit to them again. And that was enough to get the agent to disgorge the list of information. Plus, you want someone who understands that there are ethical dimensions to this. And I think that it's an excellent place to start when you begin to develop and winnow your list. Maybe the most important thing that I learned along the way, and it took me 3 or 4 swings at the ball before I connected because of things I didn't understand, was that your manuscript has to be literally in tip-top shape. And by that, either expose it to a professional editor or have it critique grouped by writers who know. And I'd like to digress for just a minute and talk a little bit about the critique group phenomenon, which was the thing that saved my career before it failed on its own without me knowing it. I had no idea what the writing community was. Just by accident, I found a writing club in my area. Through them, I got hooked up with a critique group. And it was then that I started to understand what was wrong with my manuscript. And there were lots of things wrong with it. And the more time I spent with the critique group, the more I started to understand the mechanics of the difference between prose that I liked and commercially acceptable prose. And all publishers strive to publish the same kind of books in one sense. That is, books that are filled with commercial grade prose. And here is something that I didn't learn until shortly after I got my first contract. And that is that there are 2 big pieces to your manuscript in terms of its commercial viability: the quality of the prose on one hand and the strength of the story on the other. And here's something that surprised me a bit. It was explained to me by my editor. She said, look, the most important thing is that we have to know that you as a writer can produce commercially viable prose without very much coaching. She said, we in the old days had the luxury of shepherding 2 or 3 books a year through the process, but now it's 10, 11, 12, sometimes 15. And for an editor at a publishing house to go through your manuscript and copy edit it and coach you in how to produce commercially acceptable prose, it just takes too long, and it's not going to happen. They can take a look at your prose and say, okay, this person's writing skills are ready, but there are problems with the story. For them to give you critique and feedback on how to make the story better is quite easy because they're experts at that. They understand exactly what they're doing. For them to critique the quality of your prose, it's not something that they have the time to do. So they're probably going to reject a manuscript on that basis, even if there's a really good story, because there's just no time to coach you into being a better writer. So that's the thing that you have to bring to the table on your own already. You have to be producing prose at that level. And you learn that from your critique group. You learn that from reading other authors who are already published in your area. So to recap that, and it is an incredibly important point, too much time it would take to coach a writer on how to produce commercial prose, so they'll probably take a pass. A weak story, they can fix that, and they can say, do this, this, and this, and it won't take them long to tell you that. It might take you a long time to do it, but they're pushing that work time off on the author and not shouldering that work time themselves, which leaves them the ability to go on to the other projects that they have to work. It's like spinning plates on sticks for these people. They never get a rest. Everything is constantly happening around them at different stages for different projects, and they're just not going to take the time. They don't have the time to coach you to be commercial quality prose. So you have to get that on your own. This was the other thing that brought me up short. Was I was with a critique group for quite a while, and I learned a lot from them. I learned a huge amount from this group, and I'm eternally grateful to them. And I'm still friends with lots of them, but I don't go anymore because at some point I realized I wasn't getting anything new from the group, but my friendships were deepening quite well. And these are people that I still hang out with, but I don't belong to that group anymore. And I realized I had certain problems with my manuscript that still existed. I wasn't getting help from the critique group because they had given me everything they had. So reluctantly, I moved on. And when I got to my second group, which I founded myself, someone said, yeah, you have to do this. You just have to find out what are your problems. Can the group you're with help you with them, or the critique partner you're with help you with them? If not, you need to move on, and you need to move on to someone who has the expertise you're looking for. Long story short, I went through 4 critique groups before my manuscript was bought. Each one taught me something new. Each one addressed a specific problem. So you need to be keenly aware of, very alert to the specific problems that your manuscript might have. You need to be very careful that you look for groups that can help you with that. And you need to be willing to move from group to group to group. I had to move to a group of women writers because my main character is female and I didn't know what I was doing. So I spent a year with that group and they taught me how to do that. So I can't overemphasize that enough, is make sure that you use the critique group process as a process and as a problem-solving process. And maybe the next big thing that I can offer you just from an experience basis is when you write your query letter, there needs to be 3 pieces to it. A pro query letter has what they call the hook, the book, and the cook. The hook is just some log line that will get the agent to sit up and notice it. Here's an example from a short story I recently sold. Abraham Alex uses a dog park romance between Spanky, an aging mobster's terrier companion, and Delilah, Spanky's favorite canine playmate, to avenge a decades-old murder. It sold the story rather quickly because it raised a dramatic question. How could someone use a dog park romance to get revenge on someone? Well, you got to read the story to find that out, but that sort of a thing as at the beginning of the letter will definitely make someone sit up and notice. So that's the hook. The book is a short summary of what the story is all about in a little more depth. And the cook is you. You're the one that's making this thing. So you're the one that needs to tell a little bit about yourself, your publishing history, if you have one. And as you're trying to put this thing together, especially the hook, you need to get it into 25 words or less. That's my arbitrary number, but longer than that, and it's starting to drag and people's eyes are going to glaze over. But ask yourself as you're trying to devise a log line, and these can be difficult to do, if you just can't do it, it might not be that your summary skills are off. It might be that there's something with your manuscript that needs to be fixed, so that the story is tighter and more coherent and more cogent, something that's more susceptible to a 25-word hook and a half a page summary. And of course, practice, practice, practice. Read the books by the people whose careers you want to follow. I've read so many books by Sue Grafton and Stephen King and Michael Connelly because they write the kinds of things that I want to write, and study them. Read them for pleasure and then read them again and read them again to see how they do particular things. And then the last piece of advice before I bring our panelists on is when you approach an agent, follow the submission guidelines to the letter. Follow the submission guidelines to the letter. Follow those guidelines to the letter. And now one quick thing, the golden triangle, the author agent, agent editor, and editor author. The most important one is the one between the editor and the author. You can have problems with your agent and get another agent, but if you spoil things with your editor, it's such a small community, it's going to make things very difficult for you. So if there needs to be friction in the channel between the author and the editor, let your agent do it. That's what you pay them for. So without further ado, I am going to invite our panelists on to the screen and then tell you a little bit about them. First, I'm going to bring Lisa Black on screen. Lisa, can you hear me?
Hello.
Lisa, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay. Lisa Black is the New York Times bestselling author of 14 suspense novels, including works that have been translated into 6 languages, optioned for film, shortlisted for the inaugural Sue Grafton Memorial Award. She is also a late print examiner, a certified crime scene analyst, and she began her forensics career at the coroner's office in Cleveland, Ohio, and then went to the police department in Cape Coral, Florida. She has spoken to readers and writers at numerous conferences and will be the guest of honor at 2021 Killer Nashville. Yay, yay. And next, I'm going to bring Liz Milliron. Bear with me, I'm just so slow at this program. Liz, can you hear me?
Liz.
Liz, are you there? We are. Can you hear me okay?
I gotcha.
Lovely. Liz Milliron is the author of the Laurel Highlands Mystery Series set in scenic Laurel Highlands and the Homefront Mystery set in Buffalo, New York during the early years of World War II. Broken Trust, the 3rd book in the Laurel Highlands series, came out in August of this year. And the 2nd book of the Homefront Mysteries, The Stories We Tell, is coming out in February 2021. And Liz is now an empty nester. She lives outside Pittsburgh, go Steelers, with her husband and her very spoiled retired racer, Greyhound. And now I'm going to bring on Cheryl Hollon. Well, here we go. I'm a bit fumble-fingered. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm doing the best I can. Cheryl, can you hear us?
Hi there.
Hi, Cheryl.
Hi.
Cheryl, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
There you are. Cheryl Allen writes full-time after an engineering career designing and installing military flight simulators, which I would just love to get into. I'm so jealous.
Yeah.
In England, Wales, Australia, Singapore, Taiwan, and India. Wow. She's living the dream. She combines a love of writing with a passion for creating art in St. Petersburg, Florida, one of my favorite cities. I was there for BoucherCon a few years ago, and she is the past president of your chapter, the Florida Gulf Coast Sisters in Crime, and a member of Mystery Writers. All right. So this is our panel, everyone.
Yay!
Right. I have some questions that we've all agreed to talk about, and I'm going to direct them out to individuals just so that one person can get started with them. But everyone on the panel, please feel free to chime in at any time. I'm going to start with Cheryl Hollon. I'm sorry, with Liz Milliron for this question. And I think it's one that I got from everyone. And that is, what do you wish you had known or done differently when you started on your writing journey and with a step class, so to speak?
I had an answer to this, and then I decided that there's two parts to the answer. One, I wish I had spent more time understanding the publishing business. I knew it, at least I thought I knew it. And then my book hit the market, and I realized I didn't know as much as I thought I did, which is probably not that unusual or that uncommon for most of us, but it really, I wish I had spent more time learning, and I wish I had a deeper understanding that it's really just such a different thing. And the other thing I realized as I was thinking about this, I wish I had realized you need to be your own advocate.
Yes.
Absolutely. We're used to that in terms of our healthcare. Like, if you go to the doctor, it's like you need to be your own health advocate. You need to be your book's advocate, because nobody, not your editor, not your publisher, not even your agent, if you have one, is going to love your story as much as you do. So
Yes,
if you feel that your agent is going in the wrong direction, if you feel your publisher, you need to stand up and say, this is not the vision for my story. This is not where I want to go. And you don't feel that just because you have an agent or you've signed a publishing contract, you have to sit back and take whatever they give you, because you don't. As Roger said earlier, you can always find, if you and your agent develop irreconcilable differences, there are lots of other agents out there. A dear friend of mine, Annette Dashifty, once said, the wrong agent is worse than no agent is on.
Yeah.
You can, if you develop issues with your publisher, get your agent on board. No one will ever love your story as much as you do. And I'm becoming more of my own advocate, but I wish I had known that more 3 years ago.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's a lot of fear that is inside this relationship the first time you get it, because you don't, as you said, you don't understand what the path forward looks like, and you're a little bit afraid to rock the boat because you don't know what's going to throw you out of it, right?
Yeah, and you've got the thing, and what if you lose the thing? And no, the thing will never be offered again. Well, no, it will. If you're good enough, your story's good enough, it'll be offered again.
Lisa and Cheryl, how do you all feel about this? Cheryl, what do you think? What would you have done differently or wish you had known in the beginning?
I wish I had known how quickly book 2 was going to be due.
Right, 9 years to write the first one and 9 months to write the second one.
Actually, I had 7. And my first book, I had gotten, on my first deal, I had gotten a 3-book deal on merely a proposal with 3 chapters. So I know, it's crazy, just crazy. So I learned to write a blue streak. I learned from the beginning, you've got to pound out a lot of words quickly. I wish I had known that, because I would have practiced that more before I got published. And then I wish I had known how erratic releases were actually going to be. I'm stable now. I have a release every July, and it looks like I'm going to have a release every April. I love that. But in the beginning, it's going to be all over the map. my first book came out in October, the second one in March, and then the third one in November. That's 3 books in a little over 18 months.
Wow.
That's fast.
And then there was a 14-month gap. So that was another new experience. How do you manage keeping alive over 14 months? So I wish I had known a little bit more about that. And, I could have studied that. If you look in like Goodreads or in Amazon, you can see when an author has released books, and you can get an idea about the pattern. I wish I had done that.
And Cheryl, that to me, that sounds a lot more like knowing the business.
It is a lot of knowing the business.
Yes. Yeah.
And I could have figured it out, but I didn't know I needed to know.
Yes. Yeah, that's the problem. Yes. Well, I agree totally. You need to be your own advocate. And I had kind of like the opposite, in some ways the opposite, because my first bunch of books came out really regularly, like one a year. And lately, with the publisher I have now, who's wonderful, and I have 6 books out with them, and we're working on another, they just bring it out whenever they think it's good. So whenever they're ready. So it can be really erratic. I had like 2 books come out 8 months apart, and then there was like 14 to the next book. So yeah, that really throws you off. And my first publisher, something I regret that I wish I had known, is not only that you need to utilize every opportunity. And my first books were published back in the heady days of publishing, when they had tons of money and they were spreading it around, and it was before the economy crashed. And so I wish I'd utilized some of the things they did for me to a larger extent. Now, you're happy to get anything you possibly can. You have to make the most of it. You have to do most of it yourself. And that's just reality. That's, nothing against my publisher. It's just, that's how it is.
And I think we spend so much time on that first book on what the things that Roger had mentioned in his intro, the writing and making sure your prose is right, and all the things that we can control to make the best book that we can. And we forget that after the book sells, you enter an entire woohoo, throw a party, have it's really exciting. But you have to do all these things in production and marketing and publicizing, and then by the way, write the next book, and then understand that you're good, how that fits in the pattern, so you can do all the business stuff to promote book 1 while you're still writing book 2. And it was a huge, even like I said, even though I knew that, I didn't know it until you had to do it, and then it was like, oh, good grief.
Yes. Yeah, you wind up a little schizophrenic, because you're writing one book, you're copy editing the book that came before it, and you're promoting the book that came before that was just released. So it's like you're thinking in 3 books at the same time.
Yeah.
All the time.
Which means you're then standing in front of an audience going, oh no, wait, that I can't tell you that, because that's book 3.
That's not out yet.
Yeah. And that brings me, this recounting of experience brings me to something that I think is often overlooked, and that is preparing to get into this business, because the writing one, promoting the next one, and copy editing a third one, those require skills that there's really, even if you get an MFA, these are things that there's just no organized way to learn how to do this. You have to learn on the fly, but you don't have to learn it in the middle of trying to get your first book done. In fact, I was encouraged to go to writers' conferences before I had any hopes of selling my first book, just to learn what it was like. And I'd like to hear a little bit about the experience of you, if you had something that you want to tell us in this regard, because I remember going to that first Atlanta Writers Club meeting agents and meeting editors and meeting other writers, and I walked around like I was in a daze. I had absolutely no idea how to approach the gatekeepers. I had absolutely no idea how to talk to these people. I didn't know that some of the best things that can happen there are things that happen at the social events, where you go and you meet these people and you just talk to them as people, but you learn all of the things that are going to be expected of you, and you get some insight into how other writers are doing it. Did any of you all go to writers' conferences, or have Cheryl, tell us?
Well, I kind of approached it in, well, a typical engineering way. Before I decided to write the first word, I went to Malice Domestic to see if this was the business I wanted to get into.
Yeah.
So it was 2007 was the first one I went to. And I loved the community. I knew at the time, oh my goodness, I had found my people. And because I'd actually gone to another couple of conferences too. I had gone to science fiction, and I'd gone to horror, and then I went to mystery. And oh my goodness, these are my people.
Well,
So I started writing after that. So I finally got my first agent and contract in 2013. So, that's 6 years of trying to learn to write.
yeah.
So, but since then, since that first conference, I have gotten so much information from people who willingly share all their secrets, especially at the bar, or any.
You got to go where you got to go.
What happens at the bar?
You have to do what you have to do. For anything that's troubling you, someone will tell you. This is just the best community.
Yeah,
And it's not the same in every other writing community. It's just us crime writers. We kill people on the page, but we love each other in person.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've heard it said among lots of my different writer friends, the mystery community is so open and so giving and so supportive. I went to my first conference in 2012. It was BoucherCon in Cleveland, and I almost didn't go.
Yay, Cleveland!
Cleveland, I like Cleveland. I'm okay with Cleveland. But I almost didn't go because all I had was like one short story published. And again, Annette was like, no, you really have to go. You should go. So I went to BoucherCon, and I met so many wonderful people and really got involved, hung out at the bar and met them and met the agents and met the editors. And over the years went to more conferences, and it really paid off because not only do these people share their experiences and no, you need to take it this way, or and they commiserated with you when things weren't going so well. And but then it all paid off when that first book came out, and my publisher said to me, you need blurbs, you need 5 blurbs.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't feel bad approaching people to ask because I'd been talking to them, I'd met them in the past, and they knew me and they knew my writing, and I had people falling on, every person I asked for a blurb. Oh yeah, absolutely, send it on and I'll give you a blurb. So yeah, don't wait until you've got the contract to go to the conference. Go to the conference now. Start meeting people now.
Well, I actually never went to a conference until I already had a book deal. The book wasn't out yet, but I had just sold it. So but it was at BoucherCon in Cleveland where I met my current editor and publisher, and I had been on a panel, and she just came up at my signing and gave me her card and said, and I already had a publisher, at the time. So, but she said, if you're ever looking for another publisher, just give me a call. I'd love to see, anything you write. So that would be great. And Jules says we should tell people what a blurb is.
Yes.
A blurb is basically a recommendation. It's the little quotes you see on the back of the book. I don't
have Roger had a. There you go. Roger's got one.
Stephen King
You
is
basically
saying Richard Pearson's book is real, kept me up all night. That kind of thing.
Yeah, you go to an author, usually a more established author. You say, and you ask them, "Will you read my book and give me a blurb, a recommendation?" And they do. They say it's great. Hopefully they give you a positive one. Most authors, I think, do.
Yes, and that's important. It is so important because the reader in the bookstore will look for a cover that catches their eye, and the first thing they will do is turn it over to read the cover copy and the blurbs. And if they like what they see, they'll open it up and read a page. And if they like what they read, there's a good chance they'll bring it all the way to the cash register. So those blurbs do play an important point in the buying process. When I first started going to these conferences and then started pitching my book, I actually pitched the book 3 different times over a period of 2 years, and was an absolute and utter failure. Nobody, a few people said, "Oh, sure, I'd like to see it, send it to me." And I could tell by the look on their face, they were just saying it so that I wouldn't go home with my head in my hand. But the thing that turned it all around for me was when my wife read the final, what I thought was the final version, when I finally changed the main character to a female character. And she said, yeah, the story is good, but your character is still a man. You need to learn how to do this, and I'm not going to be the one to help you. Because there are just certain things spouses should never do. Never teach one to drive, never teach your spouse how to swim golf.
Yeah.
And apparently never teach them how to write a book. So that was what motivated me to join the women's writing group in Atlanta. And that was the thing that did the trick for me. Next time at the next conference, that was when I got my first real bite, and that was the thing that sold the book. Moving on to the next question, unless there's more that I think this is an important road to plow as far as we can. What sort of thoughts do you all have on the main device and this is something that's done with a cold query, where it's not an agent or an editor that you've met in person at a conference, but you're sending the manuscript over the transom, so to speak, by just interacting with them through email or through their website. Ideas on writing a query letter that will get an agent to sit up and take notice.
Well, I would say the first thing is be professional. I mean,
Yeah.
write it, use, proper grammar and proper sentence structure, and, it's not a casual, you're not emailing your buddy about, playing some video games. You just, I mean, when I started, we were still everything was still paper. So, and I had been a secretary, so I formatted it like a business letter, like they teach you in high school, with the date and the address and everything else. And that may not be necessary in an email, but I would try and follow the same format.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to look on what that, and the thing that's aggravating, or that was aggravating to me when I was querying, is that every publisher or every agent wanted something just a little bit different. Yeah. But really, you have to go to the website and you have to find out, what do they want in their query letter? What do they want in this? Should the query letter contain the first 5 pages? Should the query letter contain the synopsis? Because as Lisa said, you're not emailing your buddy to go out for drinks. It's not like, hey, Roger, I've got this great story I'd love for you to know. It doesn't. But that said, I think the cold query is one of the hardest things that you can possibly do. When I was querying, the query letters that I had the most success with were the people that I already had some type of connection with. The cold query is just so hard, in my opinion, because you have no relationship with this person. There's no connection. There's no, hey, I met you at VoucherCon and we had a great time and you asked me to send this to you. It's like, here's my thing. And I was actually talking to Paula Meunier at Malice one day, and she showed me her inbox. And she said, this is just from today. It was 115 emails. Unsolicited. Yeah. So how do you stand out? I just think it's so hard. So yeah, you have to be professional, and you have to work that query letter because it really has to pop.
Mm-hmm. I was querying back when it was mostly email, and mostly this was in like 2012 to 2013, and you would actually get an answer. So you would get a rejection, which of course I was very proud of. I had gotten 108 rejections on one failed manuscript. But I used something called Query Tracker, which I think is still around, and that let me actually be organized about who I'd queried and who had rejected me. I think it's despicable now that no answer means no interest.
Yes.
That you don't even get an answer from an agent. You just let 6 weeks go by and then you go on. Mm-hmm. So once you have that query really polished, you need to have at least 10 of them out at all times. Yes. And I think that's a hard thing to realize that you have to do, but you just have to blindly always have 10 out.
Yeah, because one in, one out.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
If you get a rejection, you had to send one out. And when I was querying, it was right on the edge of no answer means no. So I sent out well over 100 queries. And I think I only got 10 responses. It was like my response, like actual responses that I got was 10% or a little bit less. And I saw Lisa Malice said querytracker.com is free.
It is.
It is free, but they also then have a paid version that gives you access to a couple of more analysis tools, like what is your rejection rate, what is whatever. So you got to decide for yourself whether you want to pony up. It used to be $25 a year.
And it has one really valuable thing. It actually tells you how long it will take this agent to respond, on average.
Really?
And then it also tells you out of 100 queries, how many they actually request.
Because you go in and you mark it. It's all based on people responding, saying, yeah, I heard from this agent and the answer was no. So they can then give you metrics on, based on the reported data from the people who have queried this agent. Here's how long it takes this agent to respond, and here's what their acceptance rate, here's how often they ask for a full manuscript.
And I just loved it because, I really can rock a mean Excel spreadsheet, but this is all done for you. And I'm busy doing other things now.
Yeah.
Well,
but the thing about cold querying that I found so frustrating is now, since it's no response, why isn't there a response? Is it your story? Is your story weak? Is your prose weak? Is your query weak? Well, no answer doesn't give you any answers for that. So it could be that your query letter, and I realized that's like if you don't get a query within, I think the rule used to be if you didn't get an answer within 20 queries, you got to revise your query letter.
Yeah.
I think I revised my query letter 5 times and I still never got any responses. So,
Lisa, you say something?
Well, I was doing this back like before my first book was published in 2005. So I was doing this. So I invented my own query tracker with the Excel spreadsheet. But yes, I would send out 10 queries at a time. And you're right. When I was doing it by snail mail with self-addressed stamped envelopes and everything, even then, yes, the vast majority is no response at all.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to back up and hit a topic that I touched on in my introduction and see how you all think of this. I'm working hard to say you all instead of y'all. Lifelong Southern, it's a hard habit to break. But one of the key things that is in the query letter is the hook and the summary of the book. And I would say for everyone except those 1 or 2 out of 1,000 people that we all just love to hate because they're skilled at it, it's hard to get your book crystallized in such a short number or a small number of words.
Yes.
So I would recommend that if you have a critique partner that really loves you, ask them to do it and see what you get back and use that as guidance. And the reason I say that is
a good idea.
They will be familiar with your book. They will understand the connecting rods in the story, and they may not want to talk about the things that you love a lot that really just don't need to be in the query.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think
that's a good idea.
The 2 hardest things for the writer to write are the query letter and the synopsis. How do I take my 90,000 words, my 85,000 words, and boil it down into one page? And I really do think, Roger, you're right. You need to find somebody who knows you and knows your book well enough to be able to say, no, I know that you love that part of the book and it has no place in your query. And I was fortunate enough to have a couple people who were really good at writing query letters help me with mine. It still didn't get any responses, but it was the same thing. It was like, yeah, you know what? You don't have to mention this. You don't have to mention this. But where is this part? Like, what they can tell you what's missing. And the same thing with the synopsis is get somebody on your side who's really good at that and who can tell you, chuck that part and bring in more of this.
Right. And remember that when you get someone to do that for you, that puts you on the hook. So when it's their turn to write a query and a synopsis, you got to be ready to step up and do it for them and to do a pro job at it. That's the give and take that makes the wheels of this business go.
Cheryl, what were you going to say?
I'm going to plug the great unpublished chapter of Sisters in Crime, the Guppies.
Guppies are great.
The Guppies. They have a subgroup that is specifically for getting you an agent, for your trials in getting an agent. And one of the beneficial things that they do as a group is you put out your query letter, and you will get 15 different versions of how it can be improved. Because it's a big group, and everybody critiques everybody's query letter, and that was how I got my successful query letter.
Yeah, and Lisa has a good point. Someone who hasn't read your book, if someone who hasn't read your book doesn't understand what your story is about, then you have a problem because, that's what you're sending. You're sending it to an agent who doesn't know your story.
One thing we haven't touched on that I think is important also is there are small publishing houses that will accept unagented manuscripts. There are even a few large publishing houses that have imprints within them that will accept an unagented manuscript. You got to figure out a way to connect with these people. You can meet them at writers' conferences. You can look through the pages of small publishers when you encounter these things in bookstores. And that's a perfectly good way to get into the business, is to connect to the publisher through an agent. Let me give you a word of caution, though, and that is, if you should approach a publisher directly and they should want your book and they offer you a contract, do not sign the contract unless you are yourself a book publishing contract attorney, or you've had a book publishing contract attorney read it. Now, I say this as I've started life as a corporate lawyer and spent many years practicing, teaching, studying, and writing about the law. And when I got my first contract, I had an agent, but when I got the contract, I looked at it and I was absolutely mystified by some of the things in it. And the reason is because it's something that I think Liz mentioned earlier, or maybe it was Lisa. It's the thing that you don't know that's going to cause you the problems later. And if it's something that's in the contract and you say, oh, that looks weird, you might be able to get it worked out. But if there's something that's not on the page that should be, and you don't know the business, it's hopeless for you. So if you approach a publishing house directly, and you can do that, make sure that before you sign anything, you have it explained to you by someone who's competent to do that explanation.
Yeah, and actually, Roger, that's me. That's me with I'm with a small press. I do not have an agent. I am my own agent. Sometimes I don't think I do a very good job on my own behalf. I would fire myself if that was an option. But when I got my first contract, I took it to people who knew.
Yeah.
I said, I read it and I didn't see anything that really made me go, what the heck is this? But then I took it to an expert and said, is there anything in here that I, as a non-legal professional, especially should be wary of? And they were able to read it and go, no, this is pretty straightforward. This is, you're okay. I would sign this if I think you're okay to sign this. But yeah, sometimes a publishing contract can be Greek. And if you're looking at it and going, I don't understand, what do you mean by clause 7? Don't sign it until you understand what clause 7 means, because it might be completely innocuous.
Yes.
But then you might be signing away your rights for life. The other thing about, and I'm with Level Best Books. It's run by the board of directors of Malice Domestic, so I'm, pretty confident that they know what they're doing. You also have to look into the small press, and Sisters in Crime used to have a list of small presses, and I don't know if they still maintain that list of reputable small presses to query, like, good ones. But check into the press and check into their background and check into what do they do for you as an author? What are you going to be expected to do? And if they ever ask you for money, run. Just like an agent. If they ever ask you, say, we'll publish the book if you give us $10,000, run very quickly in the other direction, because nothing, you should never pay. Agent, small press, that's a huge red flag. But I second that, Roger, very much.
Yeah, I just take care of your business up front. And that brings me to another point that I'd like to throw out. And that is, and maybe I'm the only person who does this. Like most things in my life, I've done them backwards and just bump into something good here and there. But when you think about writing a query, or you think about writing a synopsis of a book, you don't have to wait until you're done to do that. In fact, I would recommend that you do it before you write it. You don't necessarily have to outline it. You don't necessarily have to plot it. But if you can crystallize the answer to the question that your book asks in 25 words or less before you start writing it, you are way, way, way down the road to writing a manuscript that can be easily and very interestingly synopsized and very easily compressed into a log line and stuffed very easily and appealingly into a query letter. That's just my thinking. But you got to know what the question is your book is going to answer to be able to do that, which might require a little bit of odd and unanticipated thinking on your part. Does anybody else do it backwards like this?
My publisher actually requires a synopsis before I get permission to write the next book.
Nice.
So I start with the log line and then my back cover copy, which is kind of like the query letter part, and then about a 7-page synopsis. And I turn that in, and then I kind of use that as a check while I'm writing. I'll go back and go through that and make sure I'm still writing that book. Because the publisher takes that information and they do things with it. They set up, they'll use that information to create your cover, to create the real back cover copy that's going to be on your book, and to come up with marketing and promotion. So if anything changes between when I send it in and at the end of the book, I have to tell them. I have to tell them as quickly as I can if it's something I really need to change. And like an idiot, I changed the last name of the main character once. Like an idiot. Because who cares? Who cares what her last name is? But it was something I felt I needed to do. And then all of the backtracking that had to be done through the publisher, I will never do that again. Promise.
But that sounds like that must be the engineer in you talking. You would not just go out and say, oh, let's go build something. I wonder what it's going to be, right? You have to have sort of an idea of what you're going to do, what it's going to look like when you're done before you start digging that hole and putting those beams in place.
And I'm very happy that my publisher does kind of go along with my process. And Lisa and I have the same one. We have Kensington. And they kind of require that to just get the machine going. So you got to get really good at the synopsis.
And my publisher doesn't require a synopsis, but I find it helpful. I had a friend, Ramona de Felice Long, she called it, I learned it from her, it was a log line. It was, a one sentence, when blah, 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 then blah, 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 And it was just a way of encapsulating in no more than 1 or 2 sentences what the story was about. And she said, you absolutely have to be able to write this once the book is done. But it helps while you're writing the book as well. Because then you can look at it and say, well, wait a minute, am I writing that book anymore? And fortunately, with a small publisher, I get a lot of latitude. It's like, oh no, I discovered halfway through it that can't happen anymore. And they're like, okay, fine, we're cool with that. It's going to depend on your publisher. It's going to, it depends on where you end up. But that back jacket copy and that log line, they are useful tools that before you start to write, and then just as a checkpoint while you write it. Am I still doing this? Okay, good. Moving on.
And I might add that as mystery writers, we are artists, yes, but we are also mechanics, because there are certain reader expectations in the crime fiction world, and every mystery story has to have all of them. It's like building a watchworks. All the gears, all the parts, all the springs, they have to be there, they have to be in the right place, and they have to work. And you can't throw any surprises on the reader that weren't earned and weren't warranted, which means that while you can be artistic with your prose and very clever with the way you put the plots together, it absolutely has to work. And I live in such fear of a reader reading something and then emailing me, you idiot, how did you not see?
No, I've done that.
I've done that until page. Yeah,
I've got those emails.
Sure, I'm sure we all.
Yes.
But I literally write things backwards. I know the ending, and I say, okay, what has to happen in order for that ending to be there? And there might be 3 or 4 things. And you keep backing away from that until you get to the beginning, and there's still lots of ways to get there, but at least you've justified the ending when you do that. So I'm a big fan, not necessarily of plotting, but of making sure that the connecting rods of your story are there.
My problem is I always think I know the ending, and as I write, the ending changes. Like, who did it? I think I know who done it, but then by the time I'm done with draft 1, it's a completely different person because the story takes on a life of its own. It's very frustrating, but it is a good way to keep yourself on track. Like, at least even if you give yourself the flexibility to change, but knowing kind of sort of where you want to go is a good thing.
Yeah, someone put up in the comment section, a mystery is like a Rube Goldberg machine.
Yes.
It is. It's a very clever contraption that brings about a very specific result. And I think Rube Goldberg was an incredible cartoonist, and he understood story. Cartoonists can do that. They can put an entire story into one single panel. But that's sort of the thing that I'm preaching is you got to know the answer to the question your book asks, which means you got to know the question that you're working for.
And Roger's right. Readers have expectations. They want red herrings. They want false, clue. They want, but for heaven's sakes, don't cheat them. Don't bring out something magical on page 257 of your 300-page book.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's very mechanical. Linda just popped something in the chat. I'm finding conflicting information regarding the synopsis. Some recommend the synopsis be double-spaced, others want single-spaced. I'm hearing contractions on word count. What do you recommend? Read the requirements. I'd love to get, Linda, I would love to give you a more definitive, but I think Lisa and Cheryl, feel free to chime in. I don't think there's a hard rule. I think you have to read every single agent and publisher and find out what they want.
When I got my fabulous 108 rejections, but through that whole process, I had 3 different synopses. I had a 1-page, which was single-spaced. I had a 4-page, which was double-spaced. And then I had my normal 8 to 12 pages, which was also double-spaced. So I kind of had those tools so that when I was querying, I could just, pick them up and then send them along to the agent. But you have to follow their guidelines.
You do, to the letter. And some of that isn't just so that they can jerk you around. It's so that they can see that you're the kind of person they can work with. You're the kind of person who gives credence to and understands how to follow directions. Because if you don't, you do not want to be the toothache writer. You don't. Okay. Trust me.
Don't give them a reason to reject you, and not following the guidelines is a reason to reject you. Like I said, Paula, with her 115 emails, she said, I will not even bother with the people who obviously did not follow the rules.
Yeah.
Automatic rejection.
Yeah, you have to do your homework.
Yes, you do. And you have to be very, very, I mean, writing is the art part, but publishing is the business part. And you just got to do it the way they ask you to do it. Until you become a publisher yourself, you're at the mercy of a publisher. And don't lose heart. Your failures are things to learn from. And you can't let anybody scare you out of the business. Even after you get a book contract, even after you've published books, there are still scary things that go on in this business, and you just have to be steely about this stuff, which is all the more reason to join writers groups, all the more reason to go to writers conferences, build your network, find the people who are going to love you and hold your hand, people that you can call and email and say, this is happening. What does it mean? What should I do? Should I just shut up and take it? What is it? Because if you need this. It's a crazy world. And I remember after I got my first contract, I withdrew my manuscript from several agents that I hadn't heard from. But for some reason, they felt the need that they were going to be the one to break up with me. So months later, I was still getting rejections from people who I had withdrawn the manuscript from earlier on. So it's a crazy.
You need the person to pull you out of the bathroom where you're just absolutely in tears and ready to give it up because it's all just too hard. Yeah. And you need somebody who can walk in, put their arm around your shoulder, take you to the bar and say, know what? It's all good.
This happens to everyone.
This happens to everyone. Absolutely.
Everything that happens to everyone. You are not alone.
No, you're not alone. And the fact that these things happen to you is important because that's how you earn the respect of your peers. Before I got a contract, when I was still swinging and missing at these writers' conferences, I went to see a best-selling author at a major Barnes & Noble in the North Atlanta metro area. And they had all the chairs set up, and it turned out, except for the woman who was sitting behind me, because all the other chairs in the store were full, the audience was empty, so it was just me.
Yes.
And
before
the event even started, I realized, well, I've got this writer to myself. So I asked him, what was it like? And he starts telling me about how he published these books with a big publisher. He won all these awards. And then his agent said, I don't think we can work together. His publisher cut him loose. And he went from being way high up in the world to falling completely out of it. And I said, oh, gosh, that's tough, but you made it back in. He said, yes, but it's hard. You just got to stick with it. He said, by the way, what is it that you want to do? And I said, well, I'm going to publish a book. And he goes, oh, God, I feel terrible that I've told you my tale of woe. And I said, please, actually, I'm thrilled that you told me, because what it means is you can get in, you can fall out, and you can obviously get back in again. It just depends on how sturdy you are. So, the truth of the matter, because if you're not a sturdy person, you're going to have a very short run at this business.
Yeah, this is not the gig for you. I still, on that same note, I'm writing book 5 in the Laurel Highlands series right now, and in the middle of it going, this is crap. I don't know what I'm doing. This is crap. I've totally lost it. And then you read so many authors, Michael Connolly, Hank Phillip E. Ryan. I remember Mary Higgins Clark said this, and so many like huge name authors who go, yeah, I've done that. 13 books in, 27 books in.
Doesn't matter.
Still in the middle, still thinking it's crap. This is the one where they find out that I'm a fraud.
Yes.
Guess what? I'm sitting here thinking, oh, it's just me. Everybody else is so much in the game. They've got their head out. No. Everybody's had the exact same.
Yes. Every single morning I wake up thinking, I have no business doing this. I'm really not good at this. I don't know why people think I am, but they're wrong.
Well, I think that the minute you get over your imposter syndrome, you're going to be motivated to start mailing it in, and it's over for you anyway. because you'll
True.
think,
That could be
Very
you
true.
know what, right, they're just going to love it, you know, and you're on you're on the off ramp to a writing career at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Any other thoughts before we go to questions from the audience that you guys want to share? Yes, Cheryl.
I just wanted to kind of highlight some of the real positives of having a traditional publisher, because the world is so wide today. You have the freedom to do it any way you want. But specifically, with a publisher, you've got an experienced team of people who have been this way before and know the process and can take you through it in a relatively painless way. They also, in the case of Kensington, they generate a custom marketing plan just for my book. Each time it goes out, no matter which part of the series it's in, every single book has a marketing plan. And they also do a lot of promotion. I mean, I can just, do my little Facebook and tweets and do it, 24/7. They post one Facebook ad and everything goes plooey. So they just have really big reach. And then the other thing is, wow, they have distribution. My books are in every single Barnes and Noble ever.
Yeah.
I can't do that myself. I can't. And the other thing they give me is they give me a box of books free. So I get 48 books to help in my personal promotion. But they also put me in NetGalley, which is a free downloadable copy for all of the normal reviewers to get your book in advance to help pre-orders. And they do a Goodreads special. They do a lot of things that I can do, but not with the reach that they have. So I just wanted to make sure we did that.
Yeah, that's
and what you're, and I think this is actually even a question there, and what Cheryl says is true, but you also have to, not every publisher does that. Like Level Best, I get some of that. Like I get the free books and they're expanding the NetGalley and where they do their advertising and stuff. Different publishers will do different things. So make sure you also, when you're checking out publishers, when you and your agent are checking out publishing deals, what are they going to do for you? And that's going to be different. Each publisher is going to be a little bit different. They're going to give you more than, some publishers are going to give you more than other publishers are. And you have to make the call. What am I comfortable with doing? What, where's my, how much do I need to be able to succeed?
And that tees up another very important point, and it's something that as writers you can start taking care of before you sell your first book, and that is to build your personal public presence through some sort of platform, either through Facebook, Twitter, or Parler, or whatever it is, Instagram, wherever it is that you feel like you can reach a lot of people, because between two authors where an editorial board has to make a decision, one has no platform and one has an already well-developed platform that they can begin publishing or promoting with, they may go with the one who is going to be better able to help themselves. So the idea that even with a traditional publisher that they're going to do all the promo work for you, it's just not true. You're going to be able to do a whole lot of stuff. So you may as well start learning those channels and start building those channels ahead of time and learn how to use them. Watch what other authors do. Friend other authors and watch how they manage their communications with their books and learn from that. Success breeds success.
What do you got for questions?
Okay, well, I'm going to look at
unless Lisa or Cheryl have anything else they want to add.
No.
Okay, here's one. It says, I do have a question about book covers. It might be too down in the weeds, but when you work with a cover designer, should you ask for the source documents? Do they belong to the artist or the individual paying the covers? I think for a traditional publisher, you don't need to worry about that at all.
No.
Any thoughts on that?
Sounds like it might be a more, the self-publishing panel probably has a different take on it. I think in traditional publishing, you're going to find a different level of how much input. I'm fortunate being with a small publisher. I get a fair amount of input in my covers, but I still don't get the source files and I don't even worry about it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
I had to petition to get the source files for my covers because when I was doing the Glass Shop mystery series, my husband actually etched the cover of each of my books onto a crystal glass cover, and it took me weeks to get that high definition file. But they knew what I was doing because I sent them one of the glass covers so they could use it for marketing. And then, he made two, so I had one as well.
Now, the posters that are behind me, those are I got those pretty easily though. But all I said to my publisher was, I need a high definition PDF for suitable for print. They said, oh yeah, fine. Here's the file. That was
really getting easy. I mean, I have like zero input on my covers. I usually find out what my cover is when I'm like looking on Amazon for another one of my books and it pops up. I'm like, oh, that's what my cover's going to be. Usually I'm very happy with them, so it's not, that much of a problem. But I would think if you were self-published, you would definitely want to make sure that you have some sort of rights to that, to use that image in your own promotion, because you're going to be using it for years.
Yeah. And like a traditional publisher, I don't know, Lisa and Cheryl, if how your publishers handle it. My publisher does provide me with electronic files of the covers for my promotional.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they say, okay, here's your cover, for whatever you need to do on Facebook, Instagram, whatever. They do give me that.
Yeah, and you should ask for that because you can make promo materials like this nifty little book, hand out to people, and you got to have the file to do it, or you can snap it with your own phone, but it just doesn't work.
Just to be clear, we don't have the rights to the cover. So
right.
You can ask who the artist was, and sometimes they'll tell you. But other than that, it's more in the independent publishing category.
Okay, here's a great question from the audience. Full-time authors, or do you guys have other day jobs, and how does that impact the writing of book 2? Well, first of all, it's not necessarily an or, full-time author or other day job. One of my heroes in the mystery writing world, Hank Philippi Ryan, is a full-time author. She's also a full-time on-screen reporter for a major market television station in Boston. So the answer is yes.
Well, I'm too. I write. I guess I write full time because it's every single day I'm doing something for it, and I work full time as a forensic specialist for the police department. So it's very much full time plus overtime. And how does that work? It's exhausting. That's what it is.
Yeah, I have a day job. I work for 3M. I write software technical manuals.
Wow.
I usually get at least an hour a week. That's all I get is an hour a day. Because I have so many, commitments, and then I get, then after work. But there are weeks that I don't get, like this past week, I had meetings. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday was all day meetings. I think on Thursday I was in meetings from 9 o'clock till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I had a half an hour break.
Misery.
Did I get any writing done that day? No, I did not.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's exhausting. And then besides the writing, you've got to figure in all the marketing stuff. Like I have a release coming out in February. So I have others, it's the writing, it's getting that book done, and it's my day job. And yeah, it's exhausting.
It's my full-time job, but I have full-time family commitments as well. I'm a caretaker for my husband and also my 94-year-old mother, and that's long distance caretaking.
Oh, wow.
So those are stressors, but still, if I've got an hour, I write. I usually do my writing first thing in the morning.
Yes.
You do it.
Yeah, me too. I like to do it first thing in the morning.
I think there's kind of this fantasy of the writer that just has nothing else to do in his or her life except sit in a room and write. And the reality is whether you have another job or you have parents and family members you have to take care of, or if you have small children that you have to take care of, there's nobody sitting in a room for 8 hours and doing nothing but writing it. Nobody's doing.
Yeah.
I don't know that anybody's doing that.
Yeah, nobody around you cares that you need to get your writing done that day either. They're still, got to pay bills and do the laundry and get the groceries, and make dinner and do the dishes and get people's birthday cards out. And, none of that stops just because you've got writing to do. No one really cares.
And Cheryl and Cheryl and I are in the same group on Facebook, the Sprint Club. That's why I think Ramona, who started that group, was always like, she talked about your sacred writing hour, which is among everything else you have to do, you have to protect your writing time because nobody else cares. It was exactly what Lisa said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a lonely life. It really is. Someone asked a question about the cook part of the query letter, the part where you describe yourself as a writer. And the question specifically is, if you have no publishing history, what do you do at that part?
I would say explain why you're specifically suited to write that particular book. Maybe if, you don't have to have an MFA, but if your book is set at a series of murders at a daycare and you worked in a daycare for 6 years, say that.
But don't say, really, if you don't have the publishing credits, because that was me for so many years, and it was just like, it was really simple. Mention your professional affiliations. I'm a member of Sisters in Crime. I'm a member of Mystery Writers of America, because that shows an agent that you're a professional, that you're approaching this as a pro. You're not just a dabbler. Do not say, well, I've never been published before, and I'm just really hoping that this time I can. Don't talk yourself down. If you don't have publishing credits, talk about what you do have, talk about your professional membership, and like Lisa said, if there's something about you that relates to the book that you've written, maybe mention that. I never told people that I was a technical writer for a software firm because it had nothing to do with what I was writing. So I just said, I'm a member, I'm this, and it was only like 2 lines.
When I was pitching the Glass series, of course, I mentioned that my husband and I actually had a glass studio in the back of the house, and we created, works of art, and that was all I said. But that did help. But I also mentioned Sisters in Crime and Mystery Writers of America.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And one thing you can do to give yourself a bit of a publishing history is there are lots of crime fiction short story markets, both in print and online. And if you think of yourself as a novelist, try writing a short story. It is incredibly difficult, but mastering form will make you a better long form writer, and it will give you a chance to work out problems with your prose and your storytelling in a short format, and it will also give you a chance to have some publications under your belt. You'll learn a little bit about the industry. You'll be able to say, well, I published a short story, a mystery short story entitled this, and in such a place, this website, or this publication. It's a great way to build your reputation.
That's how I built mine. My cook portion of my query letter was really thin until I hit a couple of anthologies. I was in the 2016 BoucherCon anthology and Malice Domestic, and then I could say my short fiction has appeared in blah blah blah.
That's wonderful.
And and I had some credibility. I had some publishing credits. But if you don't have them, don't
worry.
Panic. Yeah, exactly. Don't worry.
There was a question near the bottom of the list, and I think this is the last one in the audience queue. Why did you want to be a traditionally published author as opposed to a self-published author?
For me, it's easy. Self-publishing wasn't really, was just beginning to be an option. Back as I said, my first book was published in 2005. It was accepted in 2004. So back then, most self-publishing was still like vanity presses and things like that, and the whole, it's so much better now for self-published authors, and it really wasn't back then. But I'm lazy, basically. If I had to do, every single bit of production and design and marketing, it's like I probably wouldn't, because that just terrifies me, and I'm not good at it. Many people are really good at it, and that's wonderful, but I'm not. So
I always intended to be traditionally published because due to my engineering background, I'm used to large teams. And I like the synergy of a group, who are all kind of working together for a single view. I love that. That's where I've lived most of my life. So I knew I wanted a team, and I wanted the best team I could get. And being a recovered engineer, I knew that I could spend months on a cover, and it would be no better than the one I could have done in a half an hour. But I would spend so much time on all the little bits of it that, okay, now where's my writing time? And I've got marketing to do as well. And I like having the guidance that a publisher should be giving you on what you can do to help boost the book. And I love having a publicist. I have Larissa. She's wonderful. And she's, they're mostly very young people who have such passion and such energy for the business. And I like working with that kind of group. So I knew I was going to do that at the beginning. And I started in 2013-ish. So again, self-publishing wasn't quite where it is now, but it was a choice then. And I've just worked in teams for so many years, and I do enjoy it.
Yeah, I actually thought about self-publishing because I had queried the first Laurel Highlands for so long, and I thought, okay, well, I'll just put it. I was just at the point of putting it in the drawer and thinking about what I was going to do when I signed with Level Best. And it was always a back pocket. Well, I could always do this. But the problem is like Roger and like, there are people who do, and like Lisa, there are people who do all self-publishing really well.
Yeah.
But I don't want all that responsibility. I'm okay with pulling my fair share of the work when it comes to publicity. But it's nice for me to be able to know that I have an editor. It's nice for me to know that somebody else is worrying about the cover. Somebody else is arranging for arcs. Somebody else is taking out an ad in magazine. I don't really want all the control and then all the responsibility that goes along with doing self-publishing the right way. I would do a half good job of it, and it would be terrible. And I don't have the time, with a full-time job and everything else. I don't have the time and the energy to do it well.
Yeah, same for me. There were certain things I did want to do, and certain things I knew I just didn't want to do, and the marketing and the technical side of it held no appeal to me. I just retired from my second or third career, and I was ready to do just the writing part of it. So I'm happy to be in a place where, people who really are good at this are doing it. And I can just be a house husband and write books and short stories, and that's perfectly fine for me. So let me check and see. I think maybe one more question came in, maybe not. No, that was it. Any parting thoughts, words of wisdom that members of the panel might want to share?
Don't give up.
Yeah, don't give up. The fact that you're here listening to this webinar and that you've gotten involved with Sisters in Crime, you're already on, I would say you've put yourself in a better position than a lot of unpublished writers or not yet published writers. Because this is not business where if you're in it to make a lot of money and to be famous, you're in the wrong business. If you're in it because you have a story to tell and you really want to share it, you're probably in the right business. But you've got to find the people who are going to hold you up, and you don't quit. Just don't quit.
I'd like to add one small thing about writers' conferences. And there are two distinct types. There are those that are geared toward helping you get published, like the Atlanta Writers' Conference, where you go and you meet agents and editors and you pitch your book. And then there are other conferences that are just for readers and authors, like VoucherCon and Malice Domestic. And these are things where you just go to meet other authors, you go to meet other readers, and they're going on all over well, not so much anymore because of COVID, but they're going on year-round, all over the place. And they're just as important a place to go and meet and learn as the ones that are geared toward just getting your book published.
Hey, Roger, Lisa mentioned that there's a comment, and I actually do see it. There's a question about pen names. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the comment.
Yes, well, can I just push that one over to you, Liz, since you are the one?
You can. So the question is, as a practicing attorney, I do not want to write under my real name. How should I establish a social media presence that won't cause issues with clients? Okay, so the cat's out of the bag. Probably one of the worst kept secrets among my friend group is my real name is not Liz Miller. I actually do write under a pen name. I went that way because I had previously written some middle grade fiction that I had tried to was with a very small press. That press folded. I wound up having to self-publish it, and that's what taught me I'm not very good at self-publishing. But I had written that under my own name, Mary Sutton. And I needed to reinvent myself. I felt like, I really need to reinvent myself. So I came up with a pen name. The question on how you come up with the presence is both simple and hard. Really sort of easy to come up with a name. There are lots of how do you come up with a name? You want to come up with a name that's short. There's some advice on where you want to pick the letters, so where you fall on the bookshelves.
Yeah.
But it's probably pretty simple to come up with a name. Pick a name. If I think you were worried about dealing with clients, don't pick your client's name as your pen name. But there are a lot of names out there that you can probably come up with. Then also easy to establish and Google it. Oh, by the way, Google it and make sure there's nobody else really famous with that name.
Yes.
How do you establish a social media presence? Then again, you want to search. Go to Instagram, go to Twitter, go to Facebook. Is that name available, or is it taken up? Because you don't want to pick a name that somebody else already has. Because ideally, on website URLs, ideally, you want a name that can be www.lizmilliron.com. That's the ideal. Is you don't want that taken. Because if you have to start doing goofy things like let's put in a hyphen or let's add, it becomes more difficult for people to remember. Same thing goes with Instagram and Twitter. Is that handle already in use? If it is, ditch it and go for something else. But once you find a name you like, and once you find a name that is available, all you have to do is buy that domain and establish those accounts. Go to Instagram and open an account and name it with your selected pen name. Mm-hmm. And then you just immerse yourself in that persona. I often feel like Liz Milliron is like a superhero. It's a costume I put on that she's so much friendlier and she's so much more outgoing and she's so much more she's so much better with people than Mary is. Mary is sort of like a dork when it comes to socializing, but Liz can go out and do those things. She can walk up to the people in the bar and say, "Hey, how's it going? Can I buy you a drink? What are you writing these days?" But then when you get into, you build your website or you have somebody build it, and you start using your social media accounts, really immerse yourself in that person. And it doesn't have to be fake. You can still be you, your real person. Mm-hmm. It's just you with a different label on it, like a can of chicken noodle soup. Mm-hmm. Are you Progresso? Are you Campbell's? Are you, whatever else? It's still you. You don't want to be too fake, And if you don't like cats, don't post pictures of cats or cat memes or anything like that, because because readers are smart and they're going to realize that you don't really like cats. You're just doing that to get followers. But really, when you're using those accounts and when that's who you are, you've put on your cape, you've put on your superhero costume, and that's who you are. But the actual picking of the name is pretty simple. Like the reason I picked that name is Liz is from Elizabeth, which is my middle name and was my grandmother's name. I was named after her. And Milliron was her maiden name. Mm-hmm. And once I had established that name was really not used by anybody famous and I was able to get all the social media handles, I said, okay, I'm going with that. And it was in the middle. It was, not on the bottom shelf where nobody's going to see you. You can look at the bookshelf. But that's the best thing I would do is make sure you stay away from anything that could be like your clients. If you're trying not to upset your clients, don't use their name. But then just go for it and embrace it. Embrace it. It's not going to stay secret. Probably it's going to come out that is not your real name. It's okay, but this is who you are in publishing. This is who you are as a writer. This is the name. This is the label that you have given yourself, and just live it. Have fun with it.
We have one question. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I had a completely different reason for choosing my pen name. It's my maiden name.
And Cheryl, I didn't even know it was a pen name.
Yeah. And my parents are so proud that they have a published author in the family. And that was my initial reason. Of course, secondary is I was working in a very serious male-oriented business, and writing these lovely, cozy mysteries didn't fit with, yelling at admirals in NATO. It didn't fit at all. So I did that. But another thing is that you can actually get asked to do a pen name by your publisher. Mm-hmm. If perhaps one series has had its flush and now is beginning to fade, mm-hmm. and you have this new idea, they may want you to use another name so that booksellers won't look at the sales of your prior book. Right. That's a strategic way of giving you kind of a fresh start, without having to begin all over again. But you'd have to go through the same process that Liz just mentioned. And it is a way for you to kind of refresh yourself.
Yeah, Cheryl, it was the same thing. My great aunt is still alive. She was actually absolutely tickled pink when I published using her name. She's married into the family, so the fact that I had, Milliron, she was absolutely tickled pink. Michael said you still submit to agents using your legal name. Yeah, everything, all of my legal stuff, all my contracts, all my royalty checks come to my legal name. Nothing comes made out to Liz. When I register for conferences, it's my registration name. And then most conferences say, do you have a pen name? And I'm able to put that in. And to Cheryl's point, your publisher may ask you. I have many friends who said, the publisher says, I want to sign you for this contract, but I want you to use a pen name. And they have many reasons for doing that. Like Cheryl said, maybe you read something and the blush is off the rose. You didn't have great sales. You didn't want to reinvent it. Maybe they just want to market you as a new author, because there's more excitement around a new author. The publisher may come to you and say, we want to give you a contract, but you need to pick a pen name. And again, it's no big deal. My friend Edith Maxwell, who many of you probably know, she's had, I don't know, 3 pen names, and all of them picked by publishers. The publishers said, hey, you need to use a pen name. It's just, like I said, just embrace it.
We have one last question, and it's interesting. Are agents and editors generally accepting of inquiries of new people onto the publishing scene looking for experiential volunteer work to learn the ropes and get a foot in the door? Just by happenstance, one of the members of the blog that I blog with was getting his MFA and found ad for an internship at an agency, and he went to work as an intern at that agency while he was getting his MFA. And the project that he did in the MFA program turned out to be his first book, and the agency that he was working at as an intern eventually took him on as a client. That's the only story I know of like that. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that, Matt? It's a very unusual question.
I've never heard of that. I think agents and publishers are more, they like to see that you're involved with things. Like if you volunteer on the board, that's something to put in your bio. I'm the co-chair of New England Crime Week, or if you volunteer, I think they'd like to see that, because again, it shows that you're involved in the community, you know what you're doing, and you're a professional.
And it shows that you won't be quite so much work, because my editor has 31 authors who write at least 1.5 books a year. That is a whole pile of work. So they're looking, like was said earlier, for ease.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are you going to be easy to work with? Are you going to be mechanically easy to edit? Anything you can do to position yourself as being someone who knows the ropes and who will be a pleasure to work with, I think would be good.
Yes.
Well, I think that is all of the questions from the audience, all of the questions that we brought with us. Any parting comments, y'all? Oh, there it slipped out, that y'all.
That's okay, Roger. We'll forgive you that one. You made it to 4 minutes, within 4 minutes of the end.
Thank you. Well, then I am going to put all the panelists back in the audience, read my wrap up, and then we are done. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Liz.
Yep. Thanks so much for inviting.
This was a great deal of fun. I had a wonderful time. See y'all at the next conference someday. And so please join me, everyone, in thanking Lisa Malice for setting up this event. And let's thank all the panelists, Lisa Black, Cheryl Hollon, and Liz Milliron, for sharing their time and their expertise. And thanks to all of you for joining us. We hope that you found some value in what we had to offer, and that it speeds your journey into the publishing world, the traditional publishing world. And now, please stay tuned for the second panel, moderated by Martha Reed, on navigating the self-publishing world. It will start promptly at 3 p.m. Eastern Time from this broadcast link. So just keep your internet browser open to this link, and we'll see you back after the break. Good luck, stay safe, and happy writing.